in terms of water quality. But before I get into that, I suppose we do have to recognise that Ireland is unique in terms of its agricultural system across Europe and across many parts of the world nowadays. It's very much a pasture-based, where give or take about 90% grassland, about 6 or 7% arable. And there's a value in that grassland in terms of, look at from a GHG point of view, in terms of production of feed. So, for example, across Europe, you're looking at about 50% arable, 50% grassland. Compared to here, the numbers I've given you. Relative level of intensity is not high in Ireland, and the relative size. So just to illustrate that, like there was a group of American dairy farmers came to Ireland recently, and they met with a number of different people, and I just saw, I didn't meet them, but saw a comment that was made. There was 50 dairy farmers in the group. They have 1.5 million dairy cows between them. Just illustrates the scale of some of that production internationally, whereas our average is somewhere around 90. So it's a family farm model based around pasture that we need to maintain, because from a biodiversity point of view, that's positive. From a landscape diversity, animal welfare, etc., those are all positive. We don't have a manure processing. I did chair the biomethane strategy, and there's an event in Croke Park today in relation. The Minister recently launched it, and I suppose that's a cross-departmental piece, but like in Ireland, it's a very nascent point in development. But underlying everything we do is to maintain that overall production. So what I say to farmers, I just want to mention it, is that there's a lot of talk out there about Ireland is unique. Yes, it is in terms of the production system. What I also caution the farming sector that we're not unique in terms of the targets. So the targets are achievement of good status, and if you deal with the Commission, etc., it's focused around targets. And then how do you match that with, well, the new unique production system they have in Ireland? But our ambition is not unique. Our targets are not unique, and everybody has to recognise that. From an evolving situation, though, as I said, in the last couple of years, there is a huge, I suppose, engagement in terms of this. So we've had a significant decline in chemical nitrogen. And let's call a spade a spade. That was initially driven by price. That price of fertiliser had gone up, but people have evolved in terms of their management practice to recognise that we can run systems with lower fertiliser. So you had about a 14% reduction in the first year, built with 18%, and that's continuing. It's maintaining at that. I don't believe there's a lot of scope for further reduction, but it will take time to see the likes of that. Stabilisation of the national herd. Look, at the herd number in total is give or take stable since about 2017, but within that we did have a growth in dairy numbers and a diminishment in suckler numbers. What we're seeing now is that growth in dairying has effectively ceased. I think it was about 500 more dairy cows last year in 1.6 million, so it's tiny. And there is a continued decline in that suckler herd, but the overall herd is slightly down actually currently. We introduced dairy cow banding, so from that perspective, what that means is, in simple management terms, is we've disaggregated a lower yielding cow, medium yielding cow, and a high yielding cow, and they're different systems, but the nutrient excretion figure, which influences the stock carrying of that farm, is now related to the dairy output on that farm. And as I said, the change in mindset. So when I go back then to what are the regulatory, because that's a key driver, and I think it's important as well that regulatory is taken put in context, in that you need the right regulation, you need compliance with that, but importantly, as a lot of farmers will be ahead of that in terms of it, so it needs to be appropriate in terms of, and it's understandable by farmers. So what we've done from a regulatory point of view in the current Nitrates Action Programme is cut the allowances in terms of maximum. These are not target application rates, but they are limits in the upper end of it. We have extended the period in which chemical fertiliser can't be spread in the springtime. We have an earlier closed period in relation to slurry applications in the autumn, and significantly a move to low emission slurry. Now, why is there a value in terms of low emission slurry? That's an ammonia driven policy objective, but importantly it also increases the efficiency of your organic manure application, so consequently you're reducing your pressure in terms of chemical. The better you utilise your organic, the less demand there is on the chemical. We've also increased the soil water period, changed the dairy excretion figure, soil sampling for anybody over, actually it's over 130 now because we've been bringing that down. Maximum crude proteins in terms of concentrate during the summer because grass is a high protein feed, and increase the level of inspections, particularly in the area of derogation. And now Ray will speak later in terms of the local authority. and importantly introduce the National Fertiliser Database. Now that was a significant piece of work because it requires primary legislation that has to go through the Oireachtas. You go through the whole process of that, then reverse in the processes of reporting into that. So effectively, farmers in this country buying fertiliser is now recorded in terms of a database, so we will get a better handle in terms of loading nationally. It's not to be applied except at inspection, but rather we'll get a sense of where overall fertiliser usage is within the country. And we also are integrating that in terms of, for example, slurry movement between farms. We have a system in terms of, I suppose, creating a database on that or managing that. And I would like to see in the future the integration of the likes of sludge movements, etc., into that system, so you have a better picture of where the overall nutrient load is. Derogation farmer conditionality with double the inspection, non-compliance on those rules is a 2-year exclusion, which is very significant, and also no grassland is allowed to plough. So you see, there's a whole suite of measures that farmers have had to take on board, and we have to recognise, these are small independent farms, so when you're asking, you have to explain why, and they have to understand why. Fertiliser database just illustrates there, I suppose, the way overall fertiliser use has come down significantly, and the requirement in terms of farmers engaging with that. So from a farmer point of view, they put in their closing stock. Thereafter, it's the point of sale will populate the fertiliser database for us, minimising the, I suppose, demand on farmers in terms of doing it. 2024, new requirements, soil water, increasing the low emission slurry spreading. So effectively, once we go above 100 kilos, approximately, we'd estimate, I think, about maybe 75–80% of all manure will then be applied by low emission. And the technology, splash plate puts it up and covers the ground, whereas trailing shoe, you're leaving it directly on the ground underneath the sward. Organic manure movements, we're moving to timely notification so that you can verify and confirm it's happening in real time, and that's happening this year as well. And in relation to derogations also, there was a lot of discussion, debate around this, and this illustrates the map. But as part of the conditionality of derogation the last time, certain criteria required a step down, and we've engaged in the department in terms of advising farmers, are they within this area, are they not? Similarly, how do you deal with farmers that are in between? They have some land in, some land out. All of those challenges are making sure that all farmers are, I suppose, appraised and aware of where they fit in relation to the likes of the map. So a lot of work has had to go in there. We also the Minister set up a water quality group, and I've had the privilege of chairing it, and I set 3 real ambitions for the work, which are very simply to say, listen, this is an engagement of stakeholders, of industry, etc., towards saying, look, within yourselves, there's I suppose, a common understanding of what needs to be done, how do we best do it. So the 3 key priorities were to improve farmer awareness. That's a key thing for me. So if you look at it, a rules-based system, the likes of nitrates regulation is fine, but it's better that farmers understand why do I do a certain management practice and what impact it has on the water quality locally. So if the farmers in the room, I'd just ask, well, look, do you know the water quality locally, and do you know the pressure, whether it's nitrogen or phosphorus, and how do we educate them on that? So, for example, engaging with the EPA, looking at how their pressure maps can be converted into something that we might give farmers to give them a better understanding is a key priority. And it can't be overcomplicated either, because if you want to get an understanding, it has to be kind of at an initial level and build on that. How do we improve compliance with the existing regulations so it's understood to be for water quality purposes rather than not getting caught? Let's be honest about it. That's in a simple term. And how do we educate farmers in terms of that? And also to bring forward new regulatory measures to improve water quality. So it's an ambitious, I suppose, programme in terms of it. We met 16 times, which is fairly significant in a 12-month period. And it's clear that there is significant engagement from all around the table in terms of how you deal with these effectively wicked challenges. The Minister will appoint an independent chair to, I suppose, ensure, look at that it is just not seen as a department vehicle, but that everybody is on board in relation to, I suppose, collective ownership of the challenge and the solutions in terms of improving water. The derogation, just to speak on it a couple of minutes, there's a lot of discussion and debate about it, and there's no doubt about it that I suppose from an interest in water quality, it is driven by the enthusiasm and the need to maintain a derogation, but it is a significant driver and important element for particularly dairy farms in the country and at national level in terms of, I suppose, the value of agricultural output. You know, if you look at it, we have about €6 billion of export from dairying in the country, about 5 billion on the beef side. So agriculture is a huge part of the rural economy. It's a give or take about 7 or 8% of the overall national economy, and a similar number in terms of employment. So it's important in that context. The Commission's clear guidance in relation to it is that water quality is less than good. The Commission wants to see improvement. Okay. I have cautioned people in terms of understanding that in terms of a derogation, these are not binary choices. They're not kind of saying, well, look, at water quality will be solved if you don't have a derogation. I can assure you that's not the case, and I'm at this long enough to know that I don't believe that to be the case. It's all about effectively choices in terms of policy. They don't become yes or no's, they're trade-offs. So for me, look at there are 2 or 3 drivers on the importance of the derogation. Yes, it's important to Irish agriculture. 2 is that in terms of land use pressure, the likelihood is that you spread out that dairying rather than effectively, I suppose, reducing it in the absence of derogation, which consequently puts pressure on other land use ambitions that we do have. So, for example, we have ambitions in terms of organics, we have ambitions in terms of increasing arable, we have ambitions in terms of forestry. You know, creating additional competition in that, I don't see a particular value in it. Similarly, nitrates is not a limit on animal numbers. I have said this before. It's Annex 3 said it's the amount of manure applied, not present. Okay, so in of itself, it's not a limit, and it is government policy in terms of a continuation, and that's the process. We make an application to the European Commission. We have 3 presentations to what is a cross-European working group in relation to it. An implementing decision is proposed for vote, and a qualified majority generates support. I did say, look, at regulation is important, but there are important things outside of regulation as well. So we currently have between 47 and 50 advisors out there, paid for through a contribution, let's say, from industry, from ourselves and agriculture, and from the Department of Housing. So it's a true collaboration in terms of a support for farmers. So it's one leg of kind of a connected stool in relation to it. CAP strategic plan, the likes of Acre scheme, have huge actions within that are aimed around water quality, such as riparian zones, low input permanent pasture, etc. And the Minister has also recently announced a water EIP of 60 million. So that supports the work of the ASIP. So ASIP is advisory service in areas of priority action. And the question is, what support then is available to the farmers who take on the advice of an ASIP advisor? And that's through the EIP, which is currently being rolled out and will be discussed later. Teagasc are going to talk about the Better Water campaign. So we have a whole series of individual actions that interconnect to ensure that you have a platform for improving water quality. So I'm over time. My key message is there is a clear, I'm genuinely convinced there's a clear, I suppose, engagement from all people in terms of need to recognise to improve water quality. Delivering that is challenging, but there is a momentum and an opportunity in terms of improving here. Government is very much committed in relation to that through the interim review and stakeholder engagement, and it does take time in terms of that, but we are committed to a science-led collaborative approach in terms of delivering water quality. That's me.